All right, welcome to Mobile Math. So in this lesson, we're going to do solving absolute value equations. In another lesson, I'll do solving absolute value inequalities, but for right now, we're just going to focus on absolute value equations. Now remember that when you're solving absolute value equations, we're going to have to set up a positive and negative case. And why is that? Because if you think about the definition of absolute value, it's the distance from a number to zero on a number line. So if I were to take the absolute value of -2, that value is 2. So from 0 to -2 on a number line is 2 units. If I took the absolute value of +2, that value is also 2. So in order to take care of that, when we're solving these, we have to set up a positive and negative case when we're doing that, which I'll show you how. So looking at this right here, before we go ahead and set up the positive and negative case, you want to get the absolute value by itself. Because if you don't, it won't always work. So make sure you isolate the absolute value first before you set up the positive and the negative case. So in here, if I want to get the absolute value by itself, I got to get rid of this -3, so I'm just going to add 3 to both sides. So when I do that, it gives me the absolute value of x plus 4 is equal to 11. Now I can go ahead and set up my positive and negative case. So how do I do that? Just split this off. So I have my positive case here, and then I'll split this off into my negative case. So for the positive case, what you do is just get rid of the absolute value, and that's it. So this is going to be x plus 4 is equal to 11. For the negative case, you're going to get rid of the absolute value, and I'm going to negate the right side. You could negate the left side, but I'm just going to go ahead and do the right. So I'm going to get rid of the absolute value, and then I'm going to negate the right side. So you can see here, I have my 2 equations that I'm going to solve, and that'll give me my answers. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 4. And some students like to do it at the same time because you're going to be doing the same steps. I'll just keep it separate. So I subtract 4 here, so I get x is equal to 7. And then I'm going to go here and subtract 4. So I get x is equal to -15. And of course, you can plug these values into the original and make sure that it's true, because in some cases you will get an extraneous solution where one of these or both of these will not be true. But if you do plug these in, you will see that they are both true. Those are both solutions. All right, so let's look at number 2 here. So we got an extra step here. Now it's very tempting to want to distribute this 3 in here, and you can't do that because you will not always get the correct answer. Besides that is you want to separate into your positive and negative case. You have to get the absolute value by itself first anyway. So what we're going to do is get rid of this 5. So we're going to subtract 5. So that gives me 3, the absolute value of 2x minus 1 is equal to 21. Now I'm going to go ahead and divide by 3. So I get the absolute value of 2x minus 1 is equal to 7. Now I can go ahead and separate into my positive and my negative case. So over here, got my positive. So positive, just get rid of the absolute value. So 2x minus 1 is equal to 7. And then for my negative case, I'm going to get rid of the absolute value and negate the right side. So this is just going to be 2x minus 1 is equal to -7. And now, of course, you're just going to solve these 2. So I'm going to go ahead and add 1. So you get 2x is equal to 8. Divide by 2, so x is equal to 4. And over here, same thing, I'm going to add 1. So I get 2x is equal to -6. Divide by 2. So I get x is equal to -3. And if you went ahead and plugged those in there, you would see that both of those are solutions, that they do work. All right, so good number 3. So over here, you can see this. Again, it's a common mistake. Students see this and they want to do 7 minus 2 is 5 and put the 5 here and then go from there. And of course, that's just not true. It's not going to work. So in order to do this, I got to get rid of the 7 first. So I'm going to go ahead, it's a plus 7, so I'm going to subtract 7. And that would be -2, absolute value 3 minus 4x is equal to 30. Now I'm going to divide by -2, both sides. So I get the absolute value of 3 minus 4x is equal to -15. Now students are ready to go, like, all right, let's go ahead and set up this positive and negative case and get this thing done. Well, take a look at this for a second. On the left side, I have just an absolute value. So no matter what value of x I put in here, when I take the absolute value of it, it's going to be positive. Well, what's the right side? The right side is a negative number. So there's no way, there's no value of x that I can ever plug in here that's going to make this whole side negative. It's not going to work. Now, if you went ahead and set up your positive and negative case, you would get two numbers. This would work and you would get two numbers. However, if you plug those two answers back into the original, they don't work. They wouldn't work. So when you see this case right here, when you have the absolute value by itself on one side and it's equal to a negative number, that can't happen. So this is no solution. I usually let my kids work this out all the way through. They get the answer and like, I got it, and they try to tell me, and I'm like, nope, 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 and they're trying to figure out what's going on, and then I do what I just did to you and just explain what's going on here, why that there's no solution here. So again, be careful about that. Also, don't just assume in the original problem, like if this was a -37, don't assume that because the right side is negative in the beginning that there's no solution. You got to isolate the absolute value first before you make that decision, because while you're isolating the absolute value, you can wind up dividing by a negative number and it turns into positive, or you can go ahead and add something or subtract something over and it makes it into a positive number. So the only way you can determine that is when the absolute value is by itself, does it equal a negative number? If that happens, it's no solution. So let's look at number 4 here. So we already have the absolute value by itself, so we can go ahead and set up our positive and our negative case. So let me go ahead and do that. So this would be x minus 5 is equal to 3x minus 1. A line there. And then for our negative case, this is going to be x minus 5 is equal to negative 3x minus 1. So now I just got to get the x to one side by itself and then continue to solve that through. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 3x. I'll just move it to this side. So that gives me negative 2x minus 5 is equal to negative 1. Then I'm going to go ahead and add 5. So negative 2x is equal to 4. And then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. So I get x is equal to negative 2. So there's one of my answers right now. Now I'm going to, over here, I have to distribute that minus sign. So I'm going to get x minus 5 is equal to negative 3x plus 1. And now do the same thing over here, move the x over to one side and continue to solve. So I'm going to add 3x. So that gives me 4x minus 5 is equal to 1. Then I'm going to add 5. And that gives me 4x is equal to 6. And then, of course, I'm going to divide by 4. So x is equal to 6 over 4, which is 3 over 2. All right, so now we got to check. So when you take this negative 2, if you look what happens, if I put negative 2 in here, okay, I'm going to wind up with an absolute value negative 7, which is 7. It's going to be a positive number. We know that. Well, if I put in negative 2 over here, I get 3 times negative 2, which is negative 6, minus 1 is negative 7. So now I have a positive 7 is equal to a negative 7, and that's not true. So this value is an extraneous solution. It does not work. It's not part of our solution. Let's look at 3 over 2. Now, if you plugged in 3 over 2 here and you plugged in 3 over 2 here, I'm kind of out of space, but if you do plug 3 over 2 in for both of those, you would see that it is true. So this is our only solution, which is x equals 3 over 2. So again, don't forget to check that, especially when you have a variable on the right side. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Again, I have many other lessons on my YouTube channel at Bombalo Math. And like my first period students used to say, make smart choices. See you next time.